All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Special Student Advisory Committee meeting on September 13th at noon. My name is Angelo Simone. I serve as the Executive Director for Student Relations and Compliance at the CSU System Office, and also the advisor to the Student Advisory Committee, the SAC. So thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day today to meet with me and to learn a little bit more about the SAC and kind of the landscape moving forward as we move into the 2023-2024 academic year. I can't believe it's already September and we're allegedly having fall-like weather at least some point soon, and hopefully it would stop raining. That would be awesome. So just a few housekeeping items before we dive right in. This meeting is recorded because it is technically a public meeting. All of our meetings are hosted on WebEx. So if you're not familiar with WebEx, there is an app that you can download on your Android or Apple phone. There's also a website for WebEx, but generally speaking, WebEx is when you download the actual app or use the actual program, it's the easiest to use as opposed to calling in or dialing into the meeting just for future reference. But if you need help with WebEx or you have questions about it, feel free to let me know and we can get that squared away with you. Everybody who joined the meeting is muted upon entry, so if you do have questions or comments or concerns or want to share something, feel free to, I think there's a function to raise your hand or unmute yourself and just state your name and what institution that you're representing. Due to this meeting being at noon on a Wednesday, which is prime time for classes, I would guess, we have some folks that couldn't join us today that are the representatives from their institutions to the Student Advisory Committee. So we'll make sure that this meeting gets shared on the YouTube channel for CSCU, so folks can watch it and become up to date for anything that they might have missed. So cameras are optional. If you're able and willing and choose to turn it on, you're welcome to do that. If not, that's fine as well. So with that being said, let me jump right into the agenda, which the first thing is to take roll call. And Hannah, thank you again. Hannah, you're Western representing?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Thank you again for taking the minutes at today's meeting. So what I will do is I will run through roll call and we will get the meeting started. And we have a few agenda items, but really the crux of today's meeting is just to talk about the SAC, what it looks like. I know some of you have questions about it, what it's comprised of, what the goals are, what the function is. And we will get all those hopefully questions answered, and we will hold elections for leadership as soon as possible so that we can get this ball rolling. So let me jump into the roll call. All right, so here we go. So if you could just unmute yourself when I call your institution and just state your first name, last name, and confirm that you're the representative for your institution for the SAC, that would be helpful. So here we go. Central Connecticut State University.
Here, Luis Sanchez.
Thank you. Eastern Connecticut State University. Eastern, I think, noted that they will be absent today. They had a class conflict, so we'll note them as absent for this meeting. Southern Connecticut State University. Western Connecticut State University.
Here, Hannah Quartang.
Thank you, Hannah. Charter Oak State College. Donna, are you here?
Yes, Donna Wagner. I'm here for Charter Oak.
Awesome, thank you. As Nuntuck.
I'm here. I'm Cristo Karaja.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Capital Community College. Gateway. Housatonic. Manchester. Interesting. Gordon's probably going to be joining us a few moments late. I know he was planning on attending. Some of these folks might be trying to get into WebEx, so we'll come back to them if they do join. Middlesex. Naugatuck Valley, Northwestern,
Hi, I'm here. I'm Carla Galais representing Northwestern.
thank you. Norwalk, Quinnebog Valley,
Brandon Johnson here. I'm just representing
Representing Quinnebog Valley.
we had some
here representing
interference. So we have Brandon for, I'm sorry, we have Brandon for Quinnebog Valley, and then I heard another voice chime in. Brandon, you can confirm you're here for Quinnebog Valley?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
QVCC's representative just joined in as well.
Oh, I see, okay. Does the representative want to introduce themselves? Maybe that's the voiceover we heard.
I mentioned Toby Stanley. I'm here for Quinnebog Valley. I don't know if it came across.
Thank you. And Three Rivers Community College. Is Three Rivers present? And Tunxus. Is Tunxus here? Okay. So we will, as I said before, there were conflicts with classes. So the good news is the meeting will be recorded and it'll be shared on YouTube. So those folks that are not here with us today can watch the recording today. If there's anybody here for an institution that I didn't call, feel free to unmute yourself and let me know your first name and last name and what institution you're here representing, if you can, please.
Hi, Safira Dollars. I'm here for Three Rivers Community College. I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute my screen. It was frozen for a second.
No problem. Thank you for letting us know. And Hannah, don't worry, I will send you the roster of names so that you'll see who is affiliated with which institutions. You don't need to, write everything down feverishly. Was there anybody else?
Yeah.
You're welcome. Okay. With that being said, we'll get started on the agenda items. And, this meeting is atypical in the sense that I'm not the one generally running these meetings. It's the chair or the vice chair, along with the important secretary, who is the one who takes the minutes. Those are all leadership positions and elected positions in this role. But before I get ahead of myself, let me talk a little bit about the SAC. Let me pull up the agenda. Hopefully you all have seen it, and we'll get started and jump right in. SAC agenda. All right, hopefully you can see my screen. The agenda should be showing. All right, so we did the call to order, the quorum, which we likely don't have at the moment because not all of our representatives from the community colleges are here, which is fine. This is mostly an informational meeting. So the Student Advisory Committee, how did you end up here? For those of you that were elected by your local student government associations at your colleges or universities, that's exciting. We're happy to have you here. We're excited to have you here. For those of you that were appointed, we're just as excited to have you here. Really, the goal of the Student Advisory Committee, and Luis is here with us. He was the vice chair of last year of the Student Advisory Committee when you represented Northwestern, right?
Yes, I was the vice chair representing Northwestern Community College last year.
See, memory served me right. So we have our esteemed colleague on the call who transferred over to Central, and he can probably provide, not to put you on the spot, some information on what his time looked like at the Student Advisory Committee in the vice chair role. But the SAC specifically is charged with culminating the ideas, the suggestions, the feedback, the pulse of what's going on your individual campuses. We have CT State that has 12 campuses that are merged into one as of this past July 1st. But you folks are the people on the ground that really bring to the Student Advisory Committee what the overall sense from the students is. What are the issues? What are the problems? What are the good things? What are the things that need improvement on? And the Student Advisory Committee is the venue for you to bring that feedback from your local campus to this group, to the committee for discussion, for action, for reflection, and really focuses on things that, affect you as students. The Student Advisory Committee name is not a cliche name. You advise the Board of Regents. It's an arm of the Board of Regents. The Board of Regents is the overarching body that oversees the Connecticut State College universities, and they really do want to ensure that they have student voice, student input, and they know what's going on in the campuses. That's the reason that we're all here, that we have our jobs. That's the reason that the board serves in the way that they do. They want to ensure our students are successful and they're actively engaged, and that our board can, hear your feedback, hear your thoughts, hear your concerns, and hopefully make changes as a system, via this group to make sure that your voices are heard. So think of it as you're the representative for your local campus. You come to this larger group that has representatives from each of the four-year institutions, the 12 community colleges, and Charter Oak, and you come and discuss those issues, concerns, or ideas to make things better, vote on things, bring a plan back to management, whether it's your local campus leadership, whether it's the chancellor's office at CSCU, and really be the voice of those students to make positive change on the campuses. So that's the way I would frame the Student Advisory Committee and their work that they do. And Luis, I don't know if you want to say a couple words about your experience on it and things that you had done. And again, if you don't want to, that's fine as well, but feel free to chime in if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. The way I see the Student Advisory Committee is you're the voice of your campus. So anything that you want to be addressed at the state level and let people know, people in charge around all 16 colleges, this is your voice right here. So, I think it's important to make sure, especially at the campus level, listen to the concern the students are having. That way, like we as a collective group can help address those problems and improve the system as a whole.
Exactly, thank you. So that's a little bit of an overview about the Student Advisory Committee. And what I'll do is after this meeting, when I send out the recording to this group, to the representatives, I'll include some information in the body of that email about some of the things that I just discussed in terms of the makeup, the leadership, a little bit about the Board of Regents. A lot of this stuff is online on the ct.edu website, but it's also helpful to see, in an email format to familiarize yourself with this. If you're not familiar with the Student Advisory Committee and some of the work that it does. The reason why we're starting, on September 13th, as opposed to earlier, some of our institutions had to make leadership elections to the SAC, and some of that didn't happen until this semester, August, September. So the goal is to have this informational meeting today, and then schedule another meeting to hold elections for the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary. And then for me to kind of fade into an advisor role to assist this group with, getting things done, facilitating conversations with the chancellor's office. I know that Chancellor Chang is excited to meet you all and to talk with you and really, hear what the student voices are on the campuses, as are other system office and CT state leadership and CSCU leadership. So we're excited to get the ball moving. I know that the Board of Regents is also excited to have students on the Board of Regents. The chair and the vice chair, for those of you that might not know, sit on the Board of Regents. They're active members, they're voting members, and they do attend those meetings in addition to other committees and assignments like finance and infrastructure, academic and student affairs, human resources and administration. So it is a big ask for the chair and the vice chair. And obviously I know that you're all students. That's first and foremost, most important. Most of us have, jobs and outside lives and personal responsibilities. So the chair role and the vice chair role can be a pretty decent size ask. So, when we talk about elections and running for those positions, think about what your, personal obligations are, what your time commitment to school is. When you're graduating, ideally we would like someone that can stay the entire academic year. So from whenever elections are held in September, October through, May 2024, when school, officially ends. So keep that in the back of your mind. In addition to chair and vice chair, there's also some requirements in the bylaws, and I will be the first one to say that the bylaws need to be updated, and maybe hopefully that will be one of the tasks or the goals of the student advisory committee, whether it's the whole committee or a subgroup, to kind of work through those bylaws that haven't been revised since really the inception of the student advisory committee, to make things a little bit more user friendly, and learn from where there's opportunities to make things flow more smoothly. And the good news is those are only 6 pages long from what I've seen, so there's not a ton of bylaws associated with it, but there has been some feedback in previous years with SACs to kind of look at the bylaws, how can we revise them to make it more easier to appoint students to it, to the SAC, and have the flow of the meetings go easier. So for the chair and the vice chair, we rotate that position yearly. So for this year, the chair will need to come from one of the Connecticut State Universities, the 4 institutions. So Central, Southern, Eastern, or Western. So if you're thinking about running for the chair role, ideally the position the candidate would come from, I'm sorry, I just misspoke. It's actually from the community colleges. Or I'm sorry, the chair is coming, let me try again. The chair is coming from a community college, not a state university. Last year, our chair was from Southern Connecticut State University. This year, the chair will be from a community college. Louis, are you raising your hand? Is that what you want to correct me on?
No, yeah, I was gonna say just flip
Thank
flop
you.
the 2 around, yeah.
So the Alexander Grant, who graduated from Southern Connecticut State, was the chair last year. This year, the chair will come from a community college. The vice chair will come from a state university, and Charter Oak has the ability to run for chair as well. They're in the community college group. The secretary can come from any constituent unit, whether it's the community college, the state university, and or Charter Oak. So that's kind of the leadership makeup. And that, again, once the bylaws are reviewed and looked at, there might be some opportunity to make some additional changes to tweak the way this is done. We have 12 representatives from community colleges, 1 from Charter Oak, 4 from the state universities. There might be a better way to host the elections in terms of time frame and who's running and how it rotates. But we would obviously want the student advisory committee to opine on that and provide suggestions and feedback. So again, chair comes from community college or Charter Oak. The vice chair comes from the state university, one of the 4, and the secretary is any and all person that wants to run. And that role is important because even though these meetings are recorded and they're posted, we do have to generate an electronic paper copy of the minutes should people want to review them. So that's also important as well. Typically speaking, pre-COVID, these meetings were held in person in Hartford at the system office at 61 Woodland Street. Since COVID, they moved obviously to an electronic WebEx format, but there is a possibility should the SAC leadership or the committee in general, all of you, choose to want to hold these meetings in a hybrid format, where some folks are online, some folks are in person. But folks have generally appreciated, at least from the feedback that we received, traveling to Hartford on Fridays at 10 a.m. for a 2-hour meeting, coming from Danbury or Norwalk or Bridgeport or even Northwestern is not the easiest thing to do. So for ease and efficiency, the meetings have stayed remote via WebEx, but there is the possibility of hybrid should this group want to do that and if it works for people's schedules. Additionally, the meetings are held, generally speaking, on Fridays at 10 a.m. Typically, that's when the least amount of classes are held, if any classes. So hopefully that might be a schedule that works. Generally, the SAC meets during months where the Board of Regents meets. So if the board has a meeting next Thursday, the SAC would have a meeting in the same month of September, corresponding with the same, with the same board schedule. We do have the ability to schedule special meetings, which is what this is, this informational meeting, that are outside the normal regular meetings, which is why it's on a Wednesday at 12 p.m. So there is some flexibility there as well. And generally speaking, we meet once a month for the duration of the academic year, generally around the winter holidays. We won't meet but there generally will be a meeting each month. If you think about it, an hour and a half, 2 hour meeting goes by pretty quickly. So there's a lot of folks at the meeting, so it's important to be respectful of everybody's time and their commitments, especially for the chair and the vice chair, because in addition to running these meetings, the SAC meetings, they also attend the board meetings, as I mentioned, and they also have some responsibility on some of the committees. So again, some important information I wanted to share, and I will put some of this in writing with regard to the responsibilities of the chair and the vice chair and the secretary. But I wanted to make sure that we at least had the opportunity to discuss this and go over in person, in person, virtually is what I mean. So the chairperson is, just some of the responsibilities, they regularly convene the SAC meetings, they may convene special meetings, they will, if they're absent for a SAC meeting, they will also, the vice chairperson will preside over the meetings, and the chairperson is also an ex officio member of the SAC subcommittee, should there be any. The vice chairperson runs the meetings in the event that the chairperson is absent, and they will perform all the other duties of the chairperson if they're unavailable. And they're also an ex officio member of all subcommittees of the SAC. For the secretary, they keep accurate minutes of all regular and special meetings and records, and we will post them in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Since these meetings are public meetings, this is a public body, folks from the community, from the public can join these meetings, whether or not we're hosting them via WebEx or hybrid or in person. So it's important to just keep that in mind. Any questions about anything I've said so far, or anything anybody wants to share before we move down the agenda? Carla, did you raise your hand? I'm going to turn off the agenda so I can see people. Okay.
Can I just ask what the time commitment looks like for the chair role? Would you say per month?
So it's a great question. Thank you. So the chair, and Luis, you can feel free to opine as well as the previous vice chair. But as I had mentioned, it's all the attendance at all the board meetings, which generally speaking, they're hybrid. So you have the ability to attend either in person or they use WebEx as well. Sometimes they are in person, and they generally either rotate between the system office in Hartford and or the local campuses, depending on what the board schedule looks like. But there generally has had the ability for the student representatives, the chair and the vice chair, to present themselves on video. Those meetings are on Thursdays from 10 a.m. till about 12 p.m. Luis knows better than me that those meetings can fluctuate and sometimes go longer, and there can be special meetings scheduled depending on what the board's agenda looks like. But the board meetings are ultimately very important because the chair and the vice chair are the only two student representatives representing all institutions on the Board of Regents. So it's important that the student reps are there, and we want the student voice to be heard and for that information to be gathered. So those meetings are about 2.5 hours. Now, obviously, if you have a class that starts at 12 o'clock on Thursday or whatever the case might be, we'll be able to work with you. But the majority of those meetings are on Thursdays, so you would need to have availability on Thursdays. And then the SAC meetings are generally once a month on Fridays, unless there's a special meeting. Now, that is not a tried and true fast rule or date for those meetings. The board meetings are set because the schedule's already out, and I'll share that with everybody. But the SAC meetings, we have the ability to change the date and time should this group want to. I'll just be frank, I've been doing this advisor role probably for 5 years now, actually. Wow, time flies. And we've moved it once, and we probably had the lowest attendance we've ever had at the SAC. It was moved to like a Wednesday, like a common hour at some of the schools. It was like 12 or 1 o'clock, and it just didn't work. And the next committee moved it back to Fridays. So if the meetings stay at Fridays at 10 a.m., which is what they're generally scheduled for, then those meetings as well. But obviously, if there's an issue like an exam or a test or some, an internship or work obligation, that's a onesie twosie type thing, the vice chair can run the meeting and the chair, or vice versa, just as long as this meeting is not for Angelo Simone to direct. I'm here to help you all. It really needs to be student led. I'm here to just help provide the roadmap and keep the train on the tracks and make your lives easier, because I'll be frank, it is a large ask. It's some work, at the end of all of this though, and Luis can speak better to this than anyone since he's here. There's some opportunities that could present themselves. The chancellor will provide a reference if requested at the end of all this, write a reference letter. Some of our student regents have been, very involved, and you can kind of make this what you want it to be as long as you're able to meet the minimum requirements. The other thing too is school is obviously very important. That's the most important factor here. So you must be in good academic standing and stay in good academic standing. So you don't want to, commit to something like a leadership role and then have your academics or your internship falter. I mean, we want you to graduate with a degree or a certificate, whatever you're going to school for, with good grades and to do your best. So, this is an unpaid role. What we've done to kind of reduce the workload on the student regents is pare back some of the committee assignments. So, the Board of Regents is required, those meetings, and then the Student Advisory Committee is required. But, academic and student affairs and HR administration, instead of serving as an active member on those over the past 2 years, we've let the board has let the student regents be ex officio members. So, if you can attend the meeting to listen in, let's say the finance committee meeting wants to talk about tuition. I mean, obviously that's important to all of us I'm not a student, all of you as students, but me as well. If they want to talk about tuition, and that's an important thing for you to hear about, you would be able to attend that meeting. These are all public meetings, but as an ex officio member, you wouldn't necessarily need to attend all those finance committee meetings and be an active member and vote and all that stuff. So we've tried to make the responsibilities more aligned with a non-paid volunteer position, keeping in mind you're probably working full or part-time and also taking a full class load. But the chair, obviously, and the vice chair, it's a pretty large time commitment. During the weeks when the board meets, you have those 2-hour meetings, 2.5-hour meetings. And then if you think about it, you have the student advisory committee, which can run an hour to 2 hours. And then any kind of prep you might need to do outside of that. So, if you think about it, the committees all report to the Board of Regents. So the Finance and Infrastructure Committee, where that subcommittee discusses, let's say, tuition increases or not raising tuition. And that group makes a recommendation to the Board of Regents. And the Board of Regents are comprised of the board members, but also the chair and the vice chair, who would vote on whether or not, let's say, tuition was increased or decreased or stayed the same. So you would get some of that information from the subcommittee at the actual board meeting, but there might need to be some, research or background reading, especially if you're representing the voices of all students across the campuses on things like tuition or mental health services in terms of votes and things like that might come up to the Board of Regents. So I try to make it as manageable as possible. We've definitely streamlined it. It's definitely doable. Luis, I don't know if you want to talk about your time at Northwestern, and I know that you were working and you also served as the vice chair.
Yeah, it's definitely a time commitment, especially because in theory you're representing across the board like 85,000 students from all the community colleges and all the state universities. And the role of the chair, I would say, has a bigger impact because, I mean, not only they're running this meeting, but also they have to prep up a little bit more just to run the meetings. I definitely think it's an experience worthwhile and definitely worth it. It definitely is a time commitment, but it's doable if you know how to manage your time.
And I know we have some alternates on the call, which is great, which is fine. But it just should be noted that alternates are not voting members of the Student Advisory Committee. It's the regular appointed members. So whoever that primary person is for your institution, they would be the ones, should there be a vote, should they want to run for a position, it has to be the full-time, regular SAC member, as opposed to any alternates that might fill in for someone that might not be able to make it. But in the event that the bylaws are revised, that could be looked at as well. But that's currently how things stand as of today. Luis?
Yeah, I just have to run out. I have a class.
Yep, sure.
Literally right now. You're probably gonna send an email with all the information regarding this, right?
Yes, definitely. Thank you for joining us, and it's good seeing you. I
No.
appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, and good to see everyone. And to a successful and year. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you soon. All right. So let me see. Nobody has questions. Feel free, if there's questions, feel free to unmute yourself and just go ahead and ask. So we talked about the leadership roles. Did that answer your question, Carla? Okay. And I'll send you some stuff in text so that you can see it and kind of ascertain whether or not that's something that you'd be interested in doing or running for. And the good news for the secretary role is we record these meetings. We didn't always do that when they were in person. So taking minutes theoretically is a lot easier to do than when we're, in person without any kind of electronic recording. So that has gotten a little bit easier as well. What will happen is I will put out a call for elections. There'll be nominations. And then what will happen is there'll be a date to submit those to me by, and then we'll schedule another special meeting theoretically to hold the elections. Now, if people are running for positions unopposed, they'll still be required to kind of talk a little bit about their resume, what they've done as a student or what they plan to do in their major. Almost, short, I don't want to say speech because I don't want that to turn people off, but a spiel or some background on who they are as a person, who they are as a student, who they are as a leader, what some of their goals for the SAC might be. They'll take some questions from other members on the call of the committee, and then we'll hold a vote and then do immediate appointments to make this as seamless as possible. So it's not a large lift. You just need to be okay talking a little bit about yourself and what you've done and kind of what you're planning to do, and take some questions from your fellow colleagues. So I will put out that date to send out in the email that I'm going to send with regard to when I would need those nominations by, and then when we'll have a special meeting to get the chair and the vice chair and the secretary appointed. Anything else? Talked about the meeting schedule. I'm going to share my screen one more time so you can see this, and the folks that are going to join us via the video recording. So there's always a WebEx link to join these meetings here that are posted. Can you see does it say upcoming meetings still? Yes, okay, good. All right, so all the meetings, whether it's a Board of Regents meeting or the Student Advisory Committee meeting, everything's here. So you see we're meeting September 13th at 12 p.m. The agenda's here. We don't live stream our meetings, but if we did, it would be on YouTube. But there will be an icon here that will show the minutes when they get posted and the recording from YouTube. And this is on the ct.edu website. There's also a link here to the YouTube channel. And then if you wanted to see when the meetings are occurring in general, we have the Student Advisory Committee meetings here. These are not fully updated yet, so don't pay too close of attention to that. But if you are thinking about running, the Board of Regents calendar is right here. This is when they meet, generally on Thursdays. And then this is when a couple of the other committees meet as well. So that might be a helpful guide to take a look at as well. If you click on the Regents tab on the CSCU website, if you want to learn about the Board of Regents and a little bit about the membership and who's on the board, how they're appointed, who votes, who doesn't, their bylaws are here. All of that stuff and background information is here as well, in addition to some of the information on committees and some of the policies and the mission and vision. So that will kind of help hopefully frame what some of the work that's done and the Student Advisory Committee and what they do to kind of further the student message and make sure that our students are successful both in and out of the classroom. So next steps would be to send out the email for the nominations with a date for the special meeting. That will probably be on a Friday, only because if that's when we're going to have our regular SAC meetings, probably makes the most sense to align it. I think more folks will be available than they are today. So you do need to be present to be able to run and to do your mini speech and answer questions. I will get that out as soon as possible. Any of our meetings have to be posted publicly on the Secretary of State's website. So there is a little bit of back end work that needs to go into this. But the goal is to get the chair and the vice chair nominated or elected as soon as possible. Carla, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just curious with the consolidation that the community colleges are now CT State. Is that going to impact? I mean, I wasn't obviously on this committee last year, but is that gonna impact how we're approaching this? Or are we all just speaking as individual representatives of our campus?
That's a good question. Carl, remind me what institution you're representing?
Northwestern.
Northwestern. It's a great question. So as it stands today, the Student Advisory Committee is written in the Connecticut General Statutes, as is the Board of Regents. And the way it's currently written is we have 12 separate representatives from the 12 separate community colleges. Now, it's my understanding, at least at this time, that CT State is still keeping their local institutional community college student government association, so there'll still be 12, which makes sense that there's still 12 representatives at the SAC level. That might be reviewed and changed in the future, but at least as it stands right now, the statute hasn't changed, and that's the plan moving forward, at least for this academic year. But that might be something that either shifts or adjusts, but there'll be an opportunity to weigh in on that, I'm sure. It's a good question, though. And, I will say that, kind of piggybacking off of that, with 12 community colleges, sometimes the issues and the concerns or the feedback, just the nature of there being 12 representatives from community college, we want to make sure that it's equal balance with the state universities and some of their needs and concerns. Obviously, a residential campus have different needs than a community college, than Charter Oak, which, is mostly completely online. So we want to make sure that whatever issues, questions, problems, projects, areas of focus that get delved into by this group, that they affect all the constituent units mostly equally. And that's something that can be, reflected back on the campus. So that's a good point, Carla. Thank you for bringing that up. But, generally speaking, the SAC, will present to the Board of Regents on the work that they've done or projects that they've endeavored on twice a year. So that usually happens in, the fall semester and then in the spring semester. There is opportunity for, subject matter experts. I know the Chancellor is excited to come talk with you all and give greetings on behalf of his office. If you want to talk about the budget or finances, which are, a big, item right now, we can bring in the interim CFO for the system and other talking heads to kind of get your questions answered, or if you need information or background, or, if you have questions about the merger for CT State, I do have the ability to kind of reach out to folks and have them come in as guest speakers. But again, this will really be driven by the chair and the vice chair and the members of the SAC in terms of generally the SAC takes 2 to 3 goals that apply to all the institutions or can apply to them, and they focus on those 3 areas to make positive change or to bring, feedback or, ways to make things better. Things in the past that they've worked on. If you have to go to class, it's completely fine. Thank you for letting us know. Public safety is big. Mental health on college campuses is something else the SAC has discussed. Having access to enough advisors in the academic advising center or guided pathways. Those are some of the things that the SAC has kind of endeavored to deal with before, and something that, the SAC could look back into, or you can come up with different goals, different objectives. You just want to make sure that whatever you bite off, you're able to kind of process through the year, because the year does go by quickly, and meeting once a month can be, challenging to get large things done. So usually the SAC takes small chunks and, a couple of major projects, and, they're able to report on those twice a year to the board and make some positive change locally back on the campuses. That's all I have on the agenda. So if nobody has questions, or if anybody has anything to add, I'll give you back your 19 minutes, and hopefully, you can enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. It's 12:41 p.m. I'm going to end this meeting. Thank you all for coming. I will send out the recording and the call to, for nominations. But in the meantime, if you have questions about anything I've said, or the roles, or the chair, or the vice chair, or secretary, please feel free to reach out to me, either via email. My phone number is on there for the messages. So feel free to ask any questions, and we will get this ball rolling. But thank you all for coming, and I appreciate taking time out of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.